Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Films and Stuff. I'm Ethan, joined by ever-present Pete. Hey, Pete. Good morning.
Morning, buddy. How are you?
Everything is great. You know the drill. You know the routine. Saturday morning, time for our weekly stream or skip episode. I introduce it with a short monologue. You take a deep breath, and in 30 seconds or less, you explain what are the rules of stream or skip. So without further ado, my friend, let's have it.
All right. Ethan and I have prepared lists of TV shows for each other to watch. Every week, we randomly assign each other one show to watch. We watch at least 2 episodes. Based on that, we determine if that TV show is worthy of being streamed or skipped.
Well said, my friend. What did you have this week?
I had a fan favorite.
Oh, yeah.
Citadel. Honey Bunny.
Yeah. Is it really called Honey Bunny?
It is called Honey Bunny.
When you messaged me, I was talking to a mutual friend last night, and we were talking about the upcoming episode that we are going to record today. And I was wondering if Honey Bunny was like an autocorrect, or I was wondering if you were referring to like an actress or something. I was like, I didn't know if you were serious and that was the actual title or if it was something else, but it's actually called, literally and legally, Citadel Honey Bunny.
That's right. That's right. And for those wondering, even though Ethan and I are very familiar with each other, I do not refer to him as Honey Bunny.
but I do refer to you as Honey Bunny.
Yeah.
So let's take a moment and just reiterate what's going on with Amazon Prime and the Citadel universe and where we got to where we are with Honey Bunny.
Absolutely. So Citadel, as you remember, as most people will remember, was a much criticized show that came out like a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago at this point.
We criticized it.
Right, exactly. That's what I meant by that.
Yeah.
It stars Priyanka Chopra and Richard Madden. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was this spy series from the Russo brothers, and they had this new and fresh idea where they were just like, hey, what if we took the concept of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and put it into a television series, which is to say, let's make the first series, Citadel, which is about this spy organization named Citadel.
Yeah.
And then in different countries and in different territories where Amazon Prime is very strong, let's create a series of local Citadel TV series.
Yep.
And eventually they'll all cross over or have the potential of crossing over. So the main Citadel was, the quote unquote American, right?
Yeah.
Then you had Citadel Honey Bunny, which is the quote unquote Indian one. Then there was supposed to be, and maybe it's still in production, I don't know, but there was supposed to be an Italian one.
Yeah.
The idea was that they were all going to cross over or connect with each other somehow, somewhere.
Can we just take a small pause to say that you and I think unanimously agreed that the idea is fantastic.
100%.
It's a global Sheridan universe.
A global Sheridan universe, and actually connected one.
Yeah.
I think in terms of, so again, conceptually, I think it's brilliant because what it allows you to do is, unlike the movies, which are, 1.5 hours, 2.5 hours, blockbusters, and, you have very limited exposure. A TV series is over 10 weeks, 20 weeks. You get a lot more exposure. And then territorially, if you have it in different territories, it gives an incentive for an Amazon Prime US customer to see what's going on with the Indian TV series, what's going on with the Italian TV series, because they like the American one so much.
Yep.
hey, I want to see how these shows connect and where they connect. And guess what? Maybe my favorite actor or my favorite plot point is going to make an appearance, right?
That's right. The idea is just so fantastic. I agree. The execution, as you said,
Has to be that the TV series has to be good. The first one
right
has to be decent.
Yeah.
And, Citadel wasn't decent.
No, that's what is not just that it wasn't decent. The production value obviously demonstrated the huge budget that Amazon put to it. But I mean, I think Priyanka Chopra makes sense because she's obviously a kind of a global star and she's very, very famous in India. But I thought that Richard Madden was a very wooden, too pretty of a choice, for the lead of something like that.
I think the lack of chemistry between them.
They're supposed to be like these soulmates, we're supposed to believe, right?
Yeah.
And they're to be honest, not even the same shape. So yeah.
So,
I mean, I also have to say part of the appeal, if we're looking at the bigger picture, part of the appeal, I think, of Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible is that they're not these ultra pretty boys. Like if you think of the traditional Bond, it was Pierce Brosnan, right? Who was like too good for he was too pretty for the screen, right? Timothy Dalton, like if you go back, the Bond was always this very suave, perfect hair, never got tussled, right? And I think with Daniel Craig, and I think that the appeal of the Mission Impossible with Tom Cruise, who is, I mean, when he was younger, was known to be obviously, very handsome, is that they're a little bit more like, I don't want to say every man, but they're not like a Abercrombie model,
right?
Taken from the glossy pages of a commercial, to be now like the secret agent. They look like they're a little bit gritty, right? Their hair gets dirty. They get cuts on their faces. Richard Madden, who's a very accomplished actor, but I feel like they cast him because he's a very, very good looking man. He's not necessarily the guy that you feel like is going to be fighting, throwing knives, diving, driving a buggy in the forest. He's I think a little bit too clean for what they're trying to do in Citadel.
Perhaps. Yeah.
That was one of my, I guess, problems with Citadel is that it wasn't gritty enough. It was just kind of cast as these are the perfect super agents. They've got these amazing reflexes and amazing skills, and everything is the 1% of the 1%, instead of showing them a little bit more gritty, like, Cruise or Daniel Craig are.
In any case, so that was our problem with Citadel.
Yeah.
Now, fast forward 2 years later, you've got Citadel Honey Bunny.
Honey Bunny.
And Citadel Honey Bunny was not what I was expecting.
In what way?
Sense that, first of all, it's a prequel series to Citadel.
Oh, really?
And it focuses on Nadia Sin, which was Priyanka Chopra's character.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So it's about Nadia as a child.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, exactly. So again, not bad in principle, but maybe they jumped the gun with a prequel. I would have suggested they make one that's concurrent to the Citadel series and continue a different plot line.
Yeah, usually you see a prequel when you've got this huge like cult following and people just like have an appetite for more.
Yeah.
But you actually don't have a next step, right? You don't really have anywhere that the story can go. So you reverse course and you say, well, let's do a prequel instead, right? And give people what they want, but it doesn't affect the storyline. You're right. Maybe it's a little bit premature for that.
Too soon for that. In any case, Honey Bunny refers to Nadia's parents. Honey is her mom. Bunny is her dad.
Oh, too clever.
This is an Indian TV series through and through. So most of the language is in Hindi.
Okay.
It's set in the early 90s and in the 2000s. So what they do is, they do that classic thing where it's set in 1992 and then it's set fast forward 10 years later, and it's set in 2002 or 2000, whatever it was.
All right.
Let's say the principal plot point is this, okay?
Okay.
Bunny is a spy. He works for a spy organization, but not Citadel. He is a stuntman in the movie industry.
Oh, Fall
And
Guy.
Honey is a struggling actor in the movie industry. They know each other. You know, she's not getting roles. She doesn't have any money. She's about to get evicted. And so Bunny takes that opportunity to say, hey, look, I've got a job for you. I need to get, this device. Can you act as, basically a honey trap? No pun intended, but can you act as a honey trap? She gets roped into this mission. She then, as you would expect, the mission kind of goes wrong. She doesn't like this. She doesn't understand what's going on. And then she calls him out. They have a big fight. And then, of course, she's just like, you know what? Actually, maybe this is an interesting life for me after all. And then she asks that she works with him and she asks to join the organization. I only saw 2 episodes. That was the early part. And then, of course, the implication is that they form a romantic connection. They have a baby, which is Nadia. And then fast forward 8-10 years, they're on the run, but Bunny's not in the picture. It's just Honey and Nadia. It seemed a little disjointed, and fair enough, it's probably going to get more explained or explained better over the rest of the series. There's only 6 episodes.
Yikes.
But it just wasn't for me because I'm not invested in the Citadel universe. Right? And that's what you need for a prequel, is you want to be invested. If Rogue One came out after A New Hope, I don't think that it would have been as successful as Rogue One was, because people are just
such
like,
a good point.
It's just one movie. What do we care about the Death Star?
That's right.
It just got blown up in the first series.
Right. It's over.
It's over. Why do we care about the Death Star? Why do we care about how the plans were made? Why do we care about this technical flaw in the thing?
Such a good analogy.
We don't need to see that. And I think that's the problem, is that I wasn't invested in Citadel. I'm not invested in Citadel after one series. Maybe if they had made this wonderful TV series and they had 2 or 3 other different storylines and 2 or 3 different other series that connected to it, then I'd be like, oh, you know what? It's nice to go back to Priyanka Chopra. What happened to her that made her this way?
I mean, the Rogue One analogy is good, right? Because it doesn't have until the end any of the original New Hope characters.
Exactly.
But where it's getting to, right? It's part of the mission. Whereas it sounds like what you've described with Honey Bunny is that there's no continuity of characters and there's no continuity of mission. Right? It's basically a standalone series for all intents and purposes.
Right. And again, nothing wrong with that. The MCU basically built that concept of standalone movies, which were all connected by a loose thread. In this case, the loose thread is Citadel, right? The spy organization, not the first series. Right. So going back to the series, look, let's talk about the good points. Really high-end production design for an Indian TV series. I've seen some Indian TV series before. This felt much more American than a normal Indian TV series, right? Okay. So the shooting effects, the explosive effects, all of those things felt more, for the lack of a better word, real.
Okay. High quality.
There was already way more chemistry between Honey and Bunny than there was before Priyanka and Madden.
Yeah.
More believable and more plausible that they would be in a relationship together and that they would have a baby together. So those are the good points, but I think that at best, and I'm trying to make 2025 a little bit more positive than I've been at the end of 2024.
New Year's resolution. Got it.
So I think that this is a strong mooch, which is to say that if the Citadel spy universe didn't exist, the first series, I think this could be interesting.
Okay.
And I think that it's got a lot of potential, although I don't think they're going to make more of them because, again, the concept was, one and done series across many different territories.
Yeah.
I doubt it'll get the American audience interested because of the language and because it's, an India focused show. The show takes place exclusively in India. So, I think, again, principally, this is a great idea, but I just think that the first piece of the puzzle was so poorly done with the Priyanka Chopra and Richard Madden series that I'm not bothered.
You're not invested. I'm
absolutely not invested. As I know you aren't either. So I call this a mooch, but like I'm not going to turn around and tell you that you should watch this. I think it's a mooch in the sense that for someone like my dad, for someone like maybe even my mom, and maybe even for someone like your mom and your dad, who are just, look, I want something short and sweet. It doesn't need to be a massive, connected universe. If they've never seen Citadel, which I don't think our parents have seen Citadel.
Nope.
So I think they could get into it relatively quickly, and I think it would be a strong move for them.
If we were in charge and Amazon or the Russo brothers came to us and said, okay, we get it. First season of Citadel was a flop. Tell us how we fix it. What would we say? Like, because we can't just have problems without a solution, right? I mean, that's your classic line. Too many mysteries, not enough answers.
Right.
What would we do to fix Citadel as a franchise?
Start fresh somewhere else. I'm not saying ignore Citadel 1. Do the Italy TV series.
Yeah.
Make it concurrent with the American series.
Yeah.
Do the Indian TV series. Make it concurrent. Don't make it a prequel.
Yeah.
Do an Indonesian one. Do a South African one. Do an Egyptian one. Do something else, right? And the advantage to all these other places is, Citadel 1 cost like a couple $100 million to make the first series.
It's outrageous.
It was one of the most expensive TV shows in the history of TV.
Yeah.
No disrespect to the film industry in India or to the TV industry in Italy or to any of the industries across the world. But I'm sure that for $300 million, I could make 10 different series across 10 different territories.
Yeah. I like what you said. I would have done I'd suggest something similar. I think we could imagine it together. But, after watching The Jackal, but I would have scaled down the story where I'm just following like one sniper, like in a very, very granular level. And then at the end, you find out that his handler or who he's dealing with is like the same guy at Citadel, who's giving the instructions to Madden and Chopra, right? Like I would have really scaled it down where it's much grittier and smaller scale and not this wide-ranging thing where they're hopping from country to country, location to location. It's just a guy like, I don't even want to say in a rooftop, but he's just like in a very small town in Brazil, or he's somewhere and he's just doing like one by one kind of like assassinations or espionage or something. I
think that's a wonderful idea.
Yeah,
I think
and then show that he's
part
of the he's part of the organization, and then you get a little bit more flavor of what they're doing.
Yeah, and it gives you time to build out the characters individually without having to worry about building out the organization.
Yeah.
Because I think that's one of the problems that Citadel as a series had, was you had to deal with the Citadel organization. You had to deal with
oh my God, that's such a good point. That's such a good point, which is if you think of every other successful series, it's not dealing with the chemistry of a couple and dealing with the, let's call it like the office environment of the organization, right? Like Cruz has a network around him, but it's not about his relationship. It's about him and his relationship to the organization, right? James Bond is him and his relationship to the organization. Then they introduce kind of like a love interest or romantic later on. But here it was from the get-go, you had to two things needed to be believable. The Citadel organization needed to be believable, and the romantic relationship, which already was weird from the beginning, between Chopra and Madden, right?
And the mission, right? So you have
Yeah.
like those three different things. Whereas, what you're saying is absolutely right.
Yeah.
With Mission Impossible, with Day of the Jackal,
Yeah.
the quasi-governmental organization is, generally speaking, a real organization. Of course, the IMF doesn't exist, but the US government does, right?
Right.
And we know by this point in everyone's lives, it's a well-established enough organization that you don't need to build up the backstory of a US governmental organization.
Yeah.
You don't need to build up the backup. You don't need to build up the MI6. Everyone knows MI6, right? You don't need to worry about what that organization's motivations are, because it's a well-established trope across not just that universe, but across all different TV series, right?
Yeah.
MI6 is the same whether you're in James Bond, in Mission Impossible, in Day of the Jackal, or whatever, right? It's always the same. So you don't have to worry about structurally building up that. Whereas Citadel, brand new organization, not governmental, not quasi anything. So focus on just the individual people, and more importantly, focus on just the mission first. I think you can do something where you're just like, hey, look, here's the mission. And then if there's a love interest that's kind of interacting and kind of maybe messing up that mission, that's an interesting way to take it. And then just sprinkle in a little bit of the Citadel at the very end. Yeah. And then after 5, 6 series, you're just like, hey, you know what? We've had a lot of sprinkles of Citadel. I think we can now build up a little bit about the organization.
Can we also compare Citadel, right? I mean, it's fun when you think about like these, I don't want to say they're nefarious, but they're like this independent spy agency. If you compare this to Black Doves, remember when we watched Black Doves on Netflix? The organization, or the Black Doves organization, had a very clear mission, which is, hey, we're just an espionage group. We're here to make money. We're a for-profit business. What is Citadel? Citadel is, I mean, MI6 is, or CIA, right? They're government.
Right. We're here to make America number one. We're here to make the UK number one.
Yeah, they have a mission statement, right?
Damned.
Yes. Black Doves has a mission statement, which is, hey, we're just trying to make money, right? We've got investors or shareholders or whatever. We're just here to make money however we can. What's Citadel? They're just like a
amorphous NGO of some kind.
Yeah, we're just an independently owned, trying to prevent nuclear disaster kind of. Practically, that seems it would never work, right?
And Black Dove's great example, by the way.
Thank you.
We didn't know anything about the organization other than the fact that they wanted to make money. We didn't care about who ran it. We also knew that old lady was just a handler. And that's it. We didn't need to worry about their board structure. We didn't need to care about anything else.
Exactly. There's no like round table board of directors, everyone sitting in a circle, tapping their rings on the table and voting. And no, it was like, okay, we don't know how big they are or how small they are, right? I mean, they could just be basically a mob organization, but
I mean, the hilarious twist would be if Black Doves was just that one lady, right?
Yeah.
Right. And what a twist that would be, by the way. It's like she's been posing as this massive organization and it's just her.
She's just a grandma.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a small time mobster operation, except instead of like shaking people down and breaking legs, they're just saying, hey, I'm going to get some people to like steal information and I'll sell it to people. There's always a market for it, right?
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, we're digressing into what could be hilarious for Black Dove season 2, but still, the point stands, right? Which is focus on one or two things and then sprinkle on the third or fourth thing. I think they tried to do too much with Citadel. I think you absolutely are right. Go local with all the other series.
Yeah.
Sprinkle a little bit of information on Citadel as an organization.
Yes.
Have one or two people who are like loose threads in between, right? Like we had Samuel L. Jackson in the MCU, right? He was the loose thread that kind of connected all the universes together. And then, have one Avengers style mashup where you're just like Priyanka Chopra has to end up working with her mom and her dad, has to end up working with some guys in Italy, has to end up working with some guys in Indonesia, some guys in Egypt, some guys in Argentina.
Yeah.
To take down this massive organization. And that's when we learn about the organization.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly it. Is you have the jackal, chasing the guy from Brazil to, Milan. And once he's in Milan, he kind of does the handoff of, hey, whose jurisdiction is this? Right?
Yeah.
And then who is it? It's J.K. Simmons who's the handler? Or did I get that wrong?
Oh my God, I don't even remember who's the handler.
And then you have the handler step in, Michael Keaton or whoever it is, right?
Whoever it is.
And be like, hold on, like you were tracking him, yeah. And now you've got to hand it off to the local team, right?
Yeah.
Let Priyanka Chopra do it now. Like you can support, it's her city, like you're gonna fall in line.
You're in France now, Jean Reno is gonna take over, and
exactly.
You go back to your territory.
Right.
I'll update you on your mission as it is. Thanks for handing it off. Let me take over. Let my local team take over.
Yep.
When we need support, we'll call you.
They cross over the border. Then there starts to be a new car chase in the Swiss Alps, and there's a new team. So, all right. Good digressions. That is Citadel Honey Bunny.
So I would normally give this a skip because I personally am not invested in Citadel as a franchise. Having said that, as a TV show on its own merits, if the first Citadel never existed, I think this is a strong mooch. And I think that if it weren't for the American Citadel, I would have sent you a message to say, hey, maybe you should check this out. It's an interesting take.
All right. Citadel, Honey Bunny, Amazon Prime. Shifting gears, my friend. We are watching a new show on Netflix. Are you ready for this?
I am.
Called Territory. Or, as I have dubbed it to you, the Yellowstone of Australia.
Okay.
So we know the popularity of Yellowstone. It just finished up its last season, right? And we bid farewell to all the characters that we've gotten to know quite well over the past, 4 or 5 seasons?
Right.
Credit to Yellowstone and Taylor Sheridan and all the other folks involved. They really, I think, captured a lot of imaginations by going to kind of a cowboy Western series, right? That we compared to Succession, but in Montana at one point. And I think they really created a new market for something. And now you see not only the Taylor Sheridan spinoffs, but you see this as a more popular genre than probably, a couple of years ago. No one would have considered, having a show based in Montana. Netflix has adopted this, or I should say co-opted this, with a show called Territory.
Okay.
It is set in the northern part of Australia, and it deals with a cattle station, which is another way of saying kind of a cattle ranch, or again, very similar to what's being done in Yellowstone, but in an Australian backdrop, which means kind of more dust, less greenery. It's more Australian, what you and I would consider an outback environment. It has just come out in 2024, and it has a pretty well-known cast. Michael Dorman, for example, who we know from For All Mankind. Michael Dorman again from For All Mankind. And a lady named Anna Torv. Yeah, related, I guess, through her sister to Rupert Murdoch. And some other well-known Australian actors, which I don't mean to minimize. I just say that they're more known in the Australian market than they are in the US market. I watched 3 episodes, as is our self-imposed requirement. And more than anything, I see it as really an Australian Yellowstone. It has its own wrinkles, but whereas Yellowstone deals with this huge ranch And then there's kind of like three conflicts, right? There's the Native American Indians who kind of believe this is part of their reservation and want this land. And they don't like the way that, the Dutton Ranch is operating. And then, of course, there's the quote unquote New York or California developers, right, who want to do an airport, casino, all this stuff, right? So these are kind of like the triangulation of the, let's say, antagonists. Territory is very similar plot structure. There is this huge cattle station, and you see at the beginning, kind of the patriarch of the family dies. So this is a little bit different than Yellowstone because you don't see that right away. But the patriarch of the family dies, and that then creates kind of a similar situation as Yellowstone, which is, okay, well, who's going to be the boss now, right?
Right.
Is it going to be the alcoholic son? Is it going to be the sister? Is it going to be the young nephew? Is it going to be the old grandfather? A little bit similar to kind of the Dutton succession issues, right?
Yeah.
Who's going to succeed John Dutton? And then, of course, instead of the Native Americans, you have the Aboriginals who also, believe that this is rightfully their land or they want to expand on it. And then, of course, you have this large mining company who believes that there's mineral rights underneath this huge cattle station. And, they want to swoop in and buy it or take it or something. And then, of course, within the family, there's, the usual drama, people getting along, not getting along, people dating their rivals and so forth. It is, as a standalone, a perfectly okay series. And I mean that not in a diminishing way. I think that the fact that I've already seen Yellowstone made it a little bit more boring because I kind of see the similarities. If you love Yellowstone, like you're just, oh man, like I don't want to see a corporate drama. I don't want to see a heist. I love this wide open space and these arguments over land and family infighting and stuff. Then honestly, this would be a good show to fill your Yellowstone void. If you're Australian and you're like, hey, I kind of like Yellowstone, but I'm not into all the American stuff, then you're going to love Territory because it's localized to Australian issues, right? But realistically, if you're not a huge fan of ranchers and these type of wide open space dramas, if you're not Australian, I think you're going to have a challenge getting into this just because the plot lines are so similar. And the way that I watched it was, well, I kind of know where this is going, right? Of course, the grandson of the rancher is going to date the granddaughter of the mining company, right? It's going to happen, right? Of course, this person's wife isn't happy here and she's going to start up with this guy. I mean, it was just, I could kind of see around the corner where the show was going. And I think that I'm a little bit Yellowstone fatigued. And that probably contributed to my a little bit negative view of the show. I gave it a skip. And I did it with a little bit of consternation because I felt that the show is actually better than a skip. I think it's really a mooch. I'd be surprised if anyone like pounded their fist on the table and said, no way, this is a must subscribe. You've got to see it. Unless you're really Australian, I don't think I feel like anyone's going to do that. But I just felt like my Yellowstone fatigue and my ability to kind of like anticipate what's going to happen turned me off to the show. And I just wasn't compelled enough by it. There's one other issue that needs to be raised, and it's no one's fault. Yellowstone is beautiful. I mean, I'd feel hard pressed, whether or not you want to live there. I feel I'd be hard pressed for anyone to objectively say, from wherever they are in the world, that the mountain ranges and the greenery isn't beautiful. Whereas Australia, God bless that big continent, is not really beautiful. It's a much more orange, dusty environment than Yellowstone is. So, and I think, Yellowstone was known a little bit for its, these time wasting montages, right? Of just
Right.
showing stuff that was beautiful, whereas Territory is not. And I think that kind of changed the way that I look at it as well. There was also something that Yellowstone had, which was a very good, very, very good idea. Remember, they had kind of like that bunkhouse
Yeah.
of that bunkhouse was a very good diversion from always being focused on John Dutton and the daughter and right, Rip. That bunkhouse provided a lot of levity and it was just a good change of pace. So far in Territory, there's not something similar. And I know if they would have used the same concept, it would have been like probably a direct ripoff. But they don't really have the staff and the staff drama and like those little, I wouldn't even say they're B plot. They're like D and E plot storylines, right? I mean, we got to know some of the guys in the bunkhouse, right? Like they had their own little girlfriends or they had their own little issues. They had their own little like quirks. We got to know them a little bit over the past few years. There's no such parallel concept in Territory. As I mentioned, I gave this a skip. I'm not going to continue it. There's just not enough for me to get behind. And again, the plot is so similar. I haven't looked at who are the executive producers or the creators, but I would be somehow super shocked if they weren't in some way inspired by Yellowstone. But if you really, really love kind of the Westerns, if you're, to be honest, Australian, and you want something different, then I could see this being a mooch, but I'd be really surprised if anyone, like I said, pounded their fist on the table and said, this is a must subscribe, one of the best shows on television. Love the characters, love the plot. Can't wait to watch the next episode on a weekly basis. But I have to say, it's a pretty savvy move by Netflix to not do a direct copy of Yellowstone based in the US. I think it makes sense to do it in Australia. I think it's a very savvy commercial move by Netflix, but for me as a casual viewer, not enough to keep my attention. So I gave this, unfortunately, a skip. I would expect it's probably going to be renewed for a season 2 just because the cast is pretty well known. Michael Dorman's a big name. Anna Torv is a pretty big name. So I would expect it's probably going to be given another season depending upon the reception.
Can I ask, so one of the things that we said about Yellowstone was that it started off as a Western and then it kind of became like this actions, like drama.
Yeah.
With a lot of shootouts more than cowboys and horses. It became more about like this, like espionage, like,
Yep.
Where are you on the spectrum for Territory? Does it still feel like a Western or does it feel like it's going to go into this territory where, you're getting into this over the top drama?
As of now, it's deeply, deeply Western, but I would expect just because there is the company that's trying to get the mineral rights or the gold mine that they think is on the land based on, the granddaughter dating the grandson or the son of that company owner. I would expect, yes, it's probably going to shift. And at some point we'll probably see an all glass high rise building in Brisbane or Sydney. Will probably have more corporate intrigue. I think that it just can't stay focused on, the Jeeps and the shotguns and the cattle forever. It's probably going to go in that direction. It hasn't gotten there yet.
Okay.
But I have to say, I'm not sure that even if it went in that direction, it would change my outlook. I mean, I kind of thought that the parts of Yellowstone that I didn't like were when it went into that direction and it turned into like shootouts and stock market hijinks. I felt like, well, look, I can watch this anywhere. I actually want to see, the ranching and the bulls.
Right. Exactly.
Yep. So I'm not sure if it actually benefits the show to veer in this direction, but I'd expect, given a long enough runway, that it's not just going to be the granularity of the cattle runs and whatever they've got going on, that there is going to be more corporate emphasis on it. Yeah, tomfoolery is well said. But I mean, this is a good decision by Netflix. I support it. It makes sense to take something that's been successful, a known quantity, and try to localize it a little bit. I'm sure it's going to help them in the Australian market. I mean, the names are big. It's done well. It's not without some merit. It's just that I do have a little bit of fatigue for Yellowstone, having watched it for a few seasons, having seen how it kind of ended. I'm not like ready to ramp up and do something very, very similar in just a different country.
Right.
So we just talked about the Citadel universe. This is like the ranching universe, you know. That's our streamer skip for this week. What are the assignments for next week?
All right. So next week you are going back to your favorite Apple TV Plus.
Ooh.
You are watching a Billy Crystal show called Before.
What?
Yeah.
Billy Crystal?
Yeah, he's back.
Huh. Okay.
And I am on Paramount Plus watching another generic sounding spy thriller called The Agency.
Have I watched this?
I don't think you have. You watched The Night Agent, and we both watched The Recruit, and this is called The Agency.
Oh my gosh. I've seen it.
Oh, you have? Okay.
I have. I saw it with my brother over holiday break. I'm so excited for you to watch this show. It's a great one.
Okay, good.
Oh, I put it on your list probably for that reason.
I imagined that this would be right up my alley. Now,
for
our listeners, you'll notice that a lot of these shows that are still quote unquote new are still 2024 shows.
That's right.
But that's because obviously, naturally, we're now in the first week of February. We're still using our old streamer skip list.
Yep.
It would be very helpful if you guys came to us and said, hey, you know what? These are the new shows that we want you to check out for us. Drop us a line so that we can update our lists.
All right. I'm in. I think we'll have a lot of good stuff to talk about. Before we depart, is there any Hollywood gossip, drama, news that we need to address?
So nothing major. I mean, I take that back. It's quite major, but nothing that I've been on top of. The one thing is this, and I'm sure you've heard it too, the Blake Lively v. Justin Baldoni fracas that's going on right now.
Is there a fracas for dummies guide? What are these two beefing about? I don't even know what they're beefing about.
That's the crazy thing. I imagine they're beefing about some form of sexual harassment.
Yeah.
Because it's Hollywood, because it's a man and a woman, I imagine that's what it is. And again, forgive me for sounding...
Isn't it her movie?
I think he was also a co-star.
No, he was a co-star, but I thought she was... I don't think she was a director, but like, I don't think that they were like just equal co-stars. I thought it was kind of like her movie, and he was like, she hired him, or she had like executive producer credit, or she was the director. Like, I thought it was kind of like her movie. So she handpicked everybody to be on the movie. Is that not the case?
I don't know, to be honest. Again, I don't know. And I'm more interested in what's going on in Ryan Reynolds' career than I am in what's going on in Blake Lively's.
Do you know anything about the plot of this movie? I have to say, I've totally ignored this movie. Maybe because of the title. It's kind of I wouldn't say a rom-com. It's a proper romance drama, right?
Yeah.
I don't also know what's going on with this, with the drama, but I feel like it started as something that I was able to ignore. And now it seems like I'm getting more and more like leaks from each side, kind of, oh yeah, well, actually this happened. Oh yeah, well, actually this happened. Oh yeah, well, there's this recording, or oh yeah, there's this message, or oh yeah, there's this person said something. Like, it started as just kind of like a typical Hollywood, like minor beef or drama, and both sides seem to be dedicated now to releasing more and more obscure recordings, messages, gossipy leaks and stuff to try to like support their side. And my general takeaway is they're both kind of like awful.
Yeah, no one's coming out of this smelling like roses.
No, it makes them kind of seem awful. Anyway, so that's that drama. Is there anything we need to talk about for Golden Globes, for Emmys, for?
So the Oscar nominations came in, and normally our regular listeners will know we do an Oscar nomination breakdown. Not this year.
Not this year.
And with all due respect to the Oscars, but last year was kind of a meh year for movies, and I think I looked at the Oscar nominations. I haven't seen half of them, and the ones that I have seen didn't appeal to me whatsoever. And, we're not highfalutin movie critics. We're regular Joes, That's the one thing about Ethan and Pete. We're regular Joes.
We're just regular Joes. I have to say the nominations, I don't know if it was a bigger deal years ago than it is now, but I agree. I think cinema has become less exciting just because all the good entertainment has kind of migrated to streaming. And there's just fewer movies I feel like are being released, and the movies that are getting the nominations are also becoming a little bit more obscure to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when I don't know something, I don't know a director, I don't know a picture, I don't know a leading actor, a supporting actor, it's just hard to get behind some of the things,
I tend to tune it out. And I know that's not the right thing to do. But it's like this Blake Lively thing.
Yeah.
Because I don't know who Justin Baldoni is, because I'm not particularly invested in Blake Lively.
Yeah.
This whole squabble that's happening amongst them, like, I will now, like you said, do the research only because it's gotten to a boiling point. Everyone and their mother is talking about it, and I don't want to be out of the zeitgeist.
Yeah, I agree. Okay. Well, that is then a wrap on Stream or Skip and Gossip. Next week, Pete's going to be looking at The Agency. So excited. I will be on Apple TV Plus, Billy Crystal with Before. I feel promising for both.
All right.
Pete, read off the YouTube social media creds so that we can get a lot of feedback and bells rung for the upcoming week.
Absolutely. Tweet at us at F&S Podcast. DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast. And of course, as usual, like this video, leave a comment below, hit that notification bell, and subscribe to our channel. All of that helps us out greatly. Let us know what shows we need to add to our streamer skip list that are a little bit more current. I mean, not that 2024 isn't current, but still, we'd like to be a little bit more up to date. All right. Until then, thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great week ahead. Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.